What happens when you look down on someone, not knowing they could change your entire future with a single phone call? Flight 572 from Los Angeles to New York wasn't supposed to be special. Clear skies, an on-time departure, and first-class passengers were already boarding. Rushed business people, artists in dark sunglasses, and a few individuals everyone silently assumed were unimportant. That family boarded the plane like anyone else. A black couple, dressed modestly, polite but understated, accompanied by a girl about 12 years old wearing a beige hoodie and clutching a stuffed teddy bear. They didn't attract attention. Until a flight attendant appeared, blonde hair pulled tight, heels clicking sharply across the cabin carpet, eyes scanning passengers as if inspecting dress codes, and stopped directly in front of them. "Excuse me," she said, not loudly, but loud enough for nearby passengers to turn their heads. "First class is full. It's possible there was a mistake with your tickets. I'll need you to move to the economy section." The man looked her straight in the eye. "I believe our tickets are correct." "I don't think you understand." She emphasized each word slowly. "This section is for first-class passengers, executives, senior partners. I need you to move now to avoid delays." The woman pressed her lips together. The little girl clutched her teddy bear tighter, eyes fixed on her mother. Another passenger, a white man in a gray suit, interjected. "I thought they were on the wrong flight, too. I mean, this is first class, right?" Soft, stifled chuckles rippled through a few rows. The black man remained calm. "We're not on the wrong flight. Our tickets have already been checked." "I'll have to call security if you don't comply," the flight attendant snapped, voice colder now, her gaze locked onto the wife, as if their very presence was an intrusion. She had no idea what she had just done. She didn't realize. She had just tried to remove from the plane the very people who created the airline. There are silences that hurt more than words ever could. Airport security arrived shortly after the flight attendant's call over the radio. Two men in blue uniforms stepped onto the plane, not in a rush, but with the kind of confidence that didn't require explanation. They looked straight at the black family, a tall man, a quiet woman, and a little girl nestled in her mother's arms. "Please come with us," one officer said, voice flat and automatic. No questions, no smiles. The cabin fell silent. Some passengers frowned. Others pretended to scroll through their phones. But the silence in that moment spoke louder than any words ever could. "May we know the reason?" the woman asked, still gently resting her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Maybe it's a random check," someone behind them whispered. "Happens all the time." "Yeah, but still strange," another replied. "They don't really look like first class, do they?" The family stood, no arguing, no scene, just a firm squeeze of the daughter's hand by her father, a quiet glance exchanged between husband and wife. Then they stepped off the plane. The little girl turned around, just once. That look would be the one thing the flight attendant could never unsee, not because it was angry, but because it was too sad, too silent, and far too familiar with a kind of humiliation she would never understand. In the VIP lounge across the terminal, a well-dressed middle-aged man in a black suit stood by a tall window, phone pressed to his ear. "Have they boarded the flight yet?" He paused, listening. A flicker of rage flashed in his eyes, though his voice remained calm, like a frozen lake with fire beneath it. "I want all camera footage from Flight 572 sent to me immediately, and get HR on the line. Now." He ended the call, then turned to a young assistant who was visibly trembling beside him. "Cancel all my morning meetings. We've got a mess to clean up at home." Back at the flight operations control room, a red alert began flashing on the screen. "Delay, Flight 572. But no one on that plane knew. The door they just saw close behind that family was also the door beginning to close on the future of several people on board. 30 minutes after the black family was escorted off the plane, Flight 572 still hadn't taken off. The lead flight attendant, Madeline Croy, stood tall, arms crossed, eyes scanning a cabin full of increasingly restless passengers. With her blonde hair neatly tied back and perfectly applied makeup, she believed she embodied the model flight attendant. Or at least, she thought so. "Why haven't we taken off yet?" "What are we waiting for? I've got a noon meeting in Chicago." The complaints started murmuring through the rows. Madeline frowned and pressed her radio. 572 to Control, is there an issue? Control here. Miss Madeline, stop service and return to the gate immediately. Orders from airline operations. She blinked. The voice wasn't the usual calm tone. It was clipped, authoritative, like a command. "Say again? You are being summoned. Immediately." A chill ran down Madeline's spine. Still, she walked off the plane with the poise of someone who believed she was right. Small conference room, gate D12. A stark white space with soundproof glass walls and a single long table with just 3 chairs. Madeline stepped inside. The man in the black suit from earlier stood waiting, arms folded. Next to him sat a stern-faced woman in a gray pantsuit. Neither rose to greet her. "Miss Croy," the man said, "have a seat." Madeline cleared her throat and sat down. "Is there a problem? The flight is waiting. We're aware, and it won't depart until this is resolved." The woman opened a laptop, on screen, cabin camera footage. It showed Madeline removing the black family from the plane. No shouting, no chaos. But her words were crystal clear. "Having a first-class ticket doesn't give you free rein. I need you to leave this aircraft." Madeline watched the video, then looked up confidently. They were behaving oddly, didn't look like first-class passengers. And the girl kept glancing around like she was filming something. I followed protocol. The man tilted his head slightly, his voice ice cold. "Are you sure that you followed protocol?" Madeline hesitated. "Yes, I think—" "No need to think any more, Miss Croy." The woman beside him gently placed a thin folder on the table. "You didn't just remove a family who had valid first-class tickets. You removed strategic shareholders and new co-owners of this airline." Silence. Madeline froze. "They were on the priority watch list mentioned during the morning briefing," the man said. "And you didn't just ignore that. You publicly humiliated them in front of 140 passengers." She leaned back in her chair, eyes wide. Her throat went dry. Every word they said felt like a wave crashing over her. The man slowly closed the folder. "They didn't ask for you to be fired." Madeline held her breath. "But I did." Business class lounge, JFK International Airport. A young black girl sat beside her mother, who wore an elegant white suit, gazing out the large terminal window where their plane was being refueled. "Mom, aren't we flying anymore?" "Not yet, sweetheart, but I have a feeling today will be an important day." The woman smiled gently, but her eyes carried a storm, calm and in control, yet filled with memory. Across the lounge, a middle-aged man approached them. Terry Madsen, deputy CEO of the airline. Sweat lined the collar of his shirt despite the cool air conditioning. "Madam, I'm sorry to bother you, but they've requested to see you in the executive boardroom." The woman turned her head slowly, not in surprise, not in haste. "I'm guessing it's not for tea." Terry gave a crooked smile. "No, ma'am, I believe it's to apologize." Executive boardroom, 8th floor tower. Inside were 4 individuals in tailored suits, all staring down at the conference table. Madeline sat off to the side, pale-faced. Across from her were legal reps, board members, and senior leadership. But the central figure had yet to arrive. Then the door opened. The black woman stepped in. Everyone stood at once, except Madeline, who only turned with a look of bewildered disbelief. White suit, long curly hair pulled high. A gaze so composed it silenced the entire room without raising her voice. "Apologies for keeping you waiting." An older man rushed forward. "Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to hear the explanation from her." All eyes turned to Madeline. She swallowed hard. Her heart thudded in her chest. I didn't know who you were. I thought, you don't need to know who I am to treat someone like a human being. The words were quiet, but landed like a slap across the room. If I weren't the one behind this airline, if I were just a mother, just a woman, would you still have treated me that way? Madeline looked down, no answer. You didn't just humiliate me. You made my daughter feel like being black meant she didn't belong in first class. The room went still. Do you know how much that hurts? Madeline trembled. She was no longer a lead flight attendant. She was a child caught in the wrath of justice. The woman sat, her tone calm but commanding. I don't need an apology. I want policy. I want full retraining of your flight crews. I want people like her to understand that customers aren't just wallets in a seat. They are human beings. Terry Madsen nodded, barely holding it together. Yes, Chairwoman Monroe. We will implement everything. Madeline slowly looked up. Monroe? You're Monroe? Jasmine Monroe, CEO of Monroe Global Aviation. And as of last week, the new chairwoman of the airline you work for. 24 hours later. Social media exploded. From TikTok to Twitter, X, Facebook to YouTube. The story of a black woman being kicked off a first-class flight, only to be revealed as the owner of the airline, spread like wildfire. A solar flare bursting across the skies of justice and prejudice. One passenger had recorded the moment Jasmine stood and quietly exited the plane with her daughter. Calm, composed, no raised voice. Another live-streamed the entire event, recounting the discriminatory tone of flight attendant Madeline, with a caption that read, "She stayed calm. We were ashamed for her." The most viral quote came from Jasmine's words in the boardroom. I don't want an apology. I want change. News outlets flooded the headlines. CEO Jasmine Monroe revealed as airline owner after racial incident on board. When quiet power speaks, the billionaire who was told to leave her own plane. Not just a seat, it's a symbol. Monroe's call for equity in the skies. At a press conference in New York, Jasmine took the podium. No theatrics, no tears, just the truth. Standing tall before a sea of cameras, she began, I'm not speaking up for sympathy. I'm speaking to remind the world that if I, someone with power, with wealth, with my name on the list of America's richest, can still be treated as if I'm no one, then what's happening to those without a microphone? She paused. A white journalist stood up. You handled this with remarkable composure. Was there ever a moment you wanted to scream? Jasmine gave a faint smile. No, I don't need to scream when the truth is already speaking for me. And that day, the truth had plenty of witnesses. Meanwhile, on the airline's internal network, an email reached the entire flight crew with the subject line, Policy Update, Equity and Dignity in Service, Mandatory Retraining Notice. At the bottom of the message, Jasmine Monroe, Chairwoman. As for Madeline, she was officially terminated for egregious violations of anti-discrimination policy. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that she had become a symbol of blind arrogance in a world that doesn't forget. The internet never forgets. Back to Jasmine. A week later, she and her daughter boarded another flight. Same plane, same first class. This time, no one asked if she was in the wrong seat. No one questioned her ticket. A young flight attendant bowed slightly. Welcome back, Chairwoman Monroe. We've prepared warm towels and tea for you and your daughter. Jasmine nodded. But just before stepping into the cabin, she spoke softly, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. What I want isn't privilege. What I want is for respect to become the standard, not the exception.